Allison Gwynn.
I'm Amelia Cormack.
And this is Some Dark Holler. I'd rather be in some dark holler where the sun refused to shine than for you to be another man's woman, never on earth to call you mine.
That post you wrote yesterday about your hair story.
Every time I leave the house, within 5 minutes, complete chaos. I don't understand.
I washed mine this morning and had it wet and let it dry on my way to the...
It looks fabulous.
Thanks.
See, I don't understand this. I take my time.
You do.
And I try to make myself look presentable. By the time I get to my destination, it's like I did nothing.
Your face always looks immaculate.
Oh,
you always have an
word.
immaculate,
I'm a sweaty
made-up,
mess.
beautiful face.
Bless you. But, yeah. Pour one out for all the hairstyles.
Pour one out for the hairstyles.
All the hairstyles that never saw its final destination.
What do you believe is the best weather for your hair?
This? Like freezing cold.
Really? Yes. Oh, yeah, because so that way it wasn't going...
Because that way I don't sweat, and then because I think I sweat a lot through my scalp, and that's what makes my curls fall down.
Oh.
Or everything fall down.
Sweating. It's so fun. So weird. Bodies are weird and amazing.
Bodies are so weird and amazing. Thank you, body.
It's a new year.
God help us all. It's a new year. Got a feeling 2025 is gonna be a good year.
Please. I feel like I'm seeing everyone's social media posts. I feel like last year was a huge one for a lot of people. A lot of people had a really rough year.
Yeah.
Not, yours truly. Obviously, you all know what happened to yours truly.
Oh.
But, came out on the other side.
You're a survivor.
I am.
Cue the Beyonce.
True.
Yeah.
Also, I don't have to take my sleeping med anymore, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
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 So that's good.
Proud of you, friend.
Thanks.
You give it to me.
Sure.
Sorry. Don't share prescription meds.
Do not.
Don't do it. Stay on the meds you have.
It's also got a slight mood stabilizing property as well.
You can share it with me. Yeah. But yeah.
It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine.
Yep. It's going to be great. It's good. Another next to normal quote because it feels like my life is next to normal now.
Yeah. Well, it is right next to adjacent.
It's adjacent. It's next to normal adjacent.
Now it's the sequel to next to normal. Adjacent to normal. Pseudo normal.
Parallel normal. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. I watched the Steve Martin documentary.
Oh yeah, we still have to watch the second part.
And he said something that I'm trying to apply to 2025 where he was talking about the work.
Yeah.
Or working on things.
Yeah.
That should be where your satisfaction is the working on art and things that you want to work on.
Totally. And I
not
think
the end of it.
Yeah, and I think by that along the same sentiment that is, us always going, this is going to be the best year ever. It sets you up for failure. It's like
disappointment.
So it's like this is going to be like so I think I've mentioned it before, but there's an Australian artist called Ben Abraham, and he has a song that is called "It Couldn't Be Worse, but It Couldn't Be Better."
I like that.
And I vibe with that so hard because, on the one hand, this is the longest period of time that I have not had work for obvious reasons. And whenever I say unemployed, Roger always says, "You're not unemployed. You've been on a leave from having a baby." I'm like, yeah, I know. But it feels like unemployment. And And then, and I was in hospital for a week. But then on the other hand, I learned so much from that. And anxiety is pretty much gone from my life. As of right now, let's see with these meds adjusting, whether that changes. But
it's a journey.
It's a journey, but it feels like the only anxiety I've felt has happened, and it's felt like 5% of what I used to feel, and it's felt much more manageable. And I've let go of so much that I used to hold on to before pregnancy with like perfectionism and particularly punishing myself. Oh my goodness.
Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. Here we are.
Did you have a good holiday?
I did. We had a very quiet New Year, but it was really nice.
That's great.
It was nice. We ordered some barbecue.
I love it.
And we sat at the dinner table, lit some candles.
Yeah.
Bob was in bed, we watched a movie. We watched Saturday Night.
Nice.
The movie about Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Have you seen it yet?
No, because I'm a big Gilda Radner fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm scared. I'll just say it. I'm scared.
Here is the thing. Don't go in expecting them to do pitch perfect impersonations of those actors. I enjoyed the interpretation.
Great. I saw Nosferatu.
Oh my God, how was it?
I'll just say this. If you're going to slurp blood for a living, or if it's your thing, don't have a mustache.
Oh, wow.
That was there's some pretty gross imagery in it. But the only thing that I held on to was how that mustache must have smelled.
Also, I find it interesting that Nicholas, what's his last name?
I know what you're talking about. The guy that plays Thomas, the lead.
Yes. He's Renfield in Nicolas Cage in Renfield, which is fun. I enjoyed that movie.
That was fun.
Very fun.
He's getting typecast a little.
I know. He's like Dracula adjacent frequently.
Yes. Literally. Yeah. If you're going to slurp blood, it's slurp.
Nicholas Hoult. Oh, thank you, Brain.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Brain.
I didn't have to resort to a search engine.
You have your own search engine.
Well, I always feel guilty about the fact that we've become so reliant on our phones now that where we used to use our brain. So I always try as long as I can go without looking it up.
I will admit that I have never relied on my brain that much. Case in point, I was on my way to Amelia's house this morning when she so benevolently sent a text saying, "I'm on my way."
I was just so thrilled that the bus was on time.
I was just like, wow, I am so glad you texted, because we would have had
It's so funny.
Mix them up of epic proportions.
I love it. Anyway,
new year.
On that,
same us.
Exactly. Just mayhem. Here is the story of the cruel Elizabeth Vickers.
Oh.
So believe it or not, today's story does not take place in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Not even on the continent of North America.
Oh, I'm interested.
Nor does it take place at Christmas.
Oh, my God.
Sort of. It's very, let's just say it's very this time of the year appropriate.
It's adjacent to normal.
Adjacent to normal.
Sorry, call back.
So this story takes place in merry old England.
Oh, core blimey.
Core. So this is the story of Elizabeth Vickers and the murder of William Jones.
Oh.
So she's rather an elusive character. I cannot find anything anywhere about her background, where she grew up, when she was born, who her parents were, and I can't even find the original tune that the ballad is said to be based on. So what you're going to hear is written by me.
Yeah,
I just made it up.
I love it.
You know,
see, when she was singing it, I thought it was like an original tune, so it's really good.
Thanks, friend. You're very kind. This is a story about greed and a poor old man who was taken advantage of and indeed killed by a wicked woman who does not end up in the manner you think she might.
Oh.
And as the ballad wishes she does.
Oh.
But no spoilers.
Okay.
Let the tale unfold as it will. Before we go any further, my main source for this story is the amazing planetslade.com and the extensive work and research done by the wonderful Mr. Paul Slade. So this website is unbelievable. It is so extensive. He has bushranger stuff on there. That's where I got some of my bushranger stuff. If you're a fan of things murderbality and just history in general, it's an incredible site. He's a British journalist. So look it up. Planet Slade, SLADE.com. Also, I had a look at the British Newspaper Archive, which is a free database of English newspapers, which is amazing. There's also a book that Paul Slade mentions that I went to and looked at. It's called The Slaveholder Abroad, or Buck's Visit with His Master to England by Ebenezer Starnes. But it has some interesting... It features articles, and I'll explain more towards the end. But he had full printouts of newspaper articles in the book about this, and for reasons that will be revealed later. Ooh. And, of course, our friend, trusty Wikipedia.
I like that you're revealing things.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Unfolding things.
I shouldn't. I'm giving too much away, but...
I love it.
But donate to Wikipedia. That's all I will say. They are fantastic, and we're all... people across podcasts rely on them. So, the lyrics for this ballad are credited to an E. Hodges from Pitt's Print Shop in Seven Dials, London.
Seven Dials!
Yay. Right there in the heart of the West End.
I worked... 2 blocks from Seven Dials.
Yep. It's called Seven Dials because there are literally 7 streets coming off of it. And the verse sheet they come from is simply titled Horrid Murder.
Oh, well.
So that's what
Topical.
we've called the song. It features 2 pictures on it, one of Lizzie sitting with mock concern by the bed of her victim, and another of her chained to her bed in Newgate Prison.
Well.
Unusually, it also includes the tune to which the verses should be sung, which is listed as The Wagon Train. Now, for the life of me, I could not find neither hide nor hair of this original tune. Huh. All that came up when I searched Wagon Train was the 1950s TV show theme song. I even tried to see if the lyric would fit to it, but alas, it is much too wordy, as you will soon see or have seen already.
How does the Wagon Train TV show sound?
It's very epic, like, I can't even remember, but it's like harmonica, like just picture,
yes.
like...
Kind of like Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, Johnny O'Neill. I think I watched a YouTube of him singing it.
Wow.
And yeah, I tried. I was like, no, this is never going to work.
It's not like Bonanza or anything.
Kind of.
Bonanza.
Yes. No, it's a little more epic and sweeping.
Yes. Kind of like
yeah.
Like what is it? Black Beauty. Da 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 da.
You know what I'll do? I will put a link to Johnny O'Neill singing it in the notes, and then
thank you.
Yes, you know what? Hold please.
By the way, New York apartments. Funny thing about them, the radiators come on. At any time, and there's no silencing them. So my apologies if you hear raspy rattling. It's not me.
He has a little talking.
There's always talking. Yeah. Uh-oh.
Get on the wagon.
Also, this voice is... So you just couldn't make...
No,
I was like,
I'm glad.
How a Lizzie could be...
Yeah, it's the wrong field. Yeah.
No, it just is never going to work.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for humoring me.
Of course. So the lyrics for this, I've used the original lyric sheet that Mr. Slade has very kindly put on the website. Nice. He lists a little more contemporary lyric in the body of his notes about this case, but I wanted to keep it as authentic as possible. So... here we go.
Take it away, Amelia.
In Acre Lane, not far from Brixton, a gentleman of late did dwell. His age, alas, was 84, and he was killed, how sad to tell, by a female named Elizabeth Vickers, whom he so kindly did maintain. And this sad deed, as we may read, has caused excitement, grief and pain. To Newgate she is now committed, Elizabeth Vickers is her name, for slaying her kind and aged master at Springfield Cottage, Acre Lane. This poor old feeble gentleman was aged 84 years. This female was as base as Menins or the murdering Courvoisier. By Mr. Jones she well was treated, a fortune to her he did make, and for his goodness this ungrateful wretch his aged life did take. To Newgate she is now committed, Elizabeth Vickers is her name, for slaying her kind and aged master at Springfield Cottage, Acre Lane. Constantly she did eschew him, barbarously she did him treat, his money spent in dissipation, and then so dreadful did him beat. His hoary head hung down with sorrow, while tears did trickle from his eyes, and she would say, before tomorrow he by my wretched hand shall die. She did ill use her benefactor, his body on the couch did stretch. Sympathy had long gone past her, base, unfeeling, cruel wretch. It by the neighbours has been stated, frequent she would wander home, like a beast intoxicated, and cruelly beat old William Jones. To Newgate she is now committed, Elizabeth Vickers is her name, for slaying her kind and aged master at Springfield Cottage, Acre Lane. And when that she had slain her master, and he was wrapped in death's cold arms, letters lovingly were sent her by some who'd viewed her brutish charms. And if those suitors now should want her, who anxious seemed with her to dwell, let them go where they may find her, confined in Newgate's dismal cell. £1,000 he had bequeathed, a cruel, base, ungrateful wretch, and she, we learn, was daily wishing to see her master sleep in death. This poor old man did cry for mercy, till he, alas, could cry no more, and she, for all his kindness, killed him at the age of 84. His body covered is with bruises, what a dreadful sight to view. His feeble limbs by her was beaten, his aged flesh was black and blue. But God's all-seeming eye beheld her, and her cruelties did see. Justice her did speedy follow, a murderer cannot go free. To Newgate she is now committed, Elizabeth Vickers is her name, for slaying her kind and aged master at Springfield Cottage, Acre Lane. For her deeds she soon must answer, she at Newgate's bar must stand. Witnesses will come against her for killing that poor aged man. If of the crime she is found guilty, alas, there's nothing can her save. She sent her kind and aged master with his grey hairs unto the grave. To Newgate she is now committed, Elizabeth Vickers is her name, for slaying her kind and aged master at Springfield Cottage, Acre Lane.
See, this is what I love about you, is that you're really good at a Cockney accent. Now, when I came into Les Mis, I was really excited about having a Cockney accent. And then they said, don't do one, and I was crushed.
What was bizarre was that I said, should I do it in American accent? They said, no, do it in, because I was allowed to do it in a Cockney accent. But
because
Alison
you
was
sounded
not.
good. And I was like, now look who's here! The little madam herself!
I mean, that's pretty good.
I mean, it's kind of, but thank you. Thank you.
I'm here for it. I love it. Okay, so...
all that to say, you sounded amazing.
Oh, thank you, friend.
I loved it.
Thank you. So this song is what is known as a broadside ballad. Broadsides were single sheets of cheap paper printed with a ballad, rhyme, or news, often with a woodcut illustration of some kind. Ooh. Hence our two little pictures that you will see on our Instagram post. They were one of the most common forms of printed material between the 16th and 19th centuries, particularly in Britain, Ireland, and North America, because they are easy to produce, especially with the advent of the printing press. They could also be cut in half lengthways to make broad slips or folded to make chapbooks, and where these contained several songs, such collections were known as garlands.
Garlands.
The vendors of these chapbooks were called chapmen, and they often sang the ballads printed on them to attract customers.
Chapman?
So if your last name is Chapman, there's a very likelihood that at some point...
you sang these broadside songs.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to perform the song a cappella in a much more kind of spoken style, because that's how it would have been heard.
I love it.
Yeah. They would retail on the streets of London for up to a penny, making them cheap and easy for everyone to enjoy, reminding me a bit of Penny Dreadfuls, which of course shows like Sweeney Todd are based on. There's a whole show called Penny Dreadful, starring my recent castmate Reeve Carney.
Oh, fun!
Yeah, he's Dorian Gray.
What? Of course he is.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, there you go. Just a little unnecessary sidetrack. Their peak popularity was during the 1600s, and they were eventually replaced by newspapers and books, eventually dying out in the 19th century. So
these things called books.
Right?
I'm kidding.
I know.
They had books before then.
They did. But not accessible to everyone.
Right.
And that was the thing about these. They're cheap and they're easy to print.
Did they have newspapers earlier? Along with these broadsides?
No, I think the broadsides came first, and then eventually when newspapers were invented, they replaced them, because this was a way that you could this is a way that you could get the news out.
Love it.
Yeah. So they lasted longer in Ireland, and although never achieving the huge numbers in the US, they were used as an important mode of propaganda during both the War of Independence and Civil War.
Oh, and also, we learned, like, from Frankie, that there were supposed broadsides of her ballad passed out during her hanging, supposedly.
Yeah. So it's a really quick and easy way to spread news, and especially to people that may not necessarily know how to read.
Yeah, and they sold them, right?
Yeah.
So that's good money.
Yeah. And I mean, at the height of their popularity, these were like hundreds of thousands of these were sold. Like
extra.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm dead. The broadside ballad itself was not as lofty as most standalone ballads of the time. Some typical topics were love, religion, drinking songs, legends, and early journalism, which included disasters and political events. Generally, broadside ballads included only the lyrics, often with the name of a known tune that would fit suggested below the title, like we see with Horrid Murder. Mm-hmm. Music critic Peter Gammon states that, quote, although the broadsides occasionally printed traditional rural ballads, the bulk of them were of urban origin, written by the journalistic hacks of the day to cover such news as a robbery or a hanging, to moralise, or simply to offer entertainment. In their diversity, they covered all the duties of the modern newspaper. The use of crude verse or doggerel was common, as this was... I know, isn't it a great word? Yeah. As this was thought to heighten the dramatic impact. The verses themselves would be based on the rhythms of various traditional airs that were in common circulation, sometimes credited, occasionally with the melody line printed, which would have been super helpful with this one, but no. This gave the verses shape and substance and helped to make them more memorable. A widely known tune like Green Sleeves, for example, was frequently used in this way.
Oh, yeah.
So we've come across that a little bit with hymns and songs.
How firm a foundation for most.
Yeah. And the more, because the easier the tune, the more recognizable, the more you're going to see lots of different stories and ballads set to it. So, to our murder most horrid. This story takes place in 1850s London, Springfield Cottages, Acre Lane, Brixton to be precise.
Oh.
And I love Brixton.
Is that where David Bowie's from? I think.
Might be. It's like the Harlem of London.
Right.
It's amazing. Elizabeth Vickers was a housekeeper to an elderly man named Mr. William Jones. Now, the only description I could find of her is a middle-aged and well-dressed woman.
Well.
So, make of that what you will.
Me. Okay.
You're much nicer than this woman is portrayed as. It's true. All right.
I could be a booger in disguise.
Call back.
Oh
my God. She was, in fact, his wife's niece. So she was Mr. Jones's niece.
Okay.
Sorry, his wife's niece, and had moved in with him shortly after his wife's death in 1838. He was 68 at the time. In May of 1850, so 12 years later, Mr. Jones asked his family doctor, David Key, to draft his will, leaving £300 to Mr. Key and £1,000 to Miss Vickers. He was apparently well enough to walk to Mr. Key's office on his own once the papers were ready for signing in the summer of 1851.
Okay.
So there's a good 13 years that passed with no reports of anything untoward. However, it was apparently around this time that the up until now respectable Miss Vickers began drinking.
Uh-oh.
Early in 1852, according to her testimony, neighbour Miss Susanna, or Susan, I saw both in my research, Miss Allen of 5 Springfield Cottages was approached by Vickers at the garden fence. Quote, "She told me as soon as the breath was out of Mr. Jones' body, she could go to the bank and take the money. She said she was tired of waiting for an old man and then she would get married to a young one."
Oh.
I will get you to read Vickers when it comes up.
Uh-oh.
In August of that year, Mr. Key came to visit Mr. Jones and noticed bruises on his face.
Oh, no.
Quote, "I have been to see the deceased several times when I could not get in, but not for a month or two before his death. I saw him once in August last. He had then 2 black eyes and a slight scratch or 2 upon the nose and likewise upon the chin. The prisoner was present at the time, and I asked him in her presence if he had fallen down the stairs. He made no answer, but the prisoner, before he had time to do so, exclaimed,
'Don't answer.'
And he did not." Perfect.
Cool blimey, don't answer.
I love this. Is good. It's so exciting. His nephew, also named William Jones, came to visit that month. So Mr. Jones's nephew, who's also named William Jones. Quote, "On my entering the house, I found him shaving himself and could see that he had marks of serious violence on his face. I asked him how he had received them, upon which he exclaimed, 'Hush, hush, she's in the next room. I can't tell you now, but will presently.' The door of the next room was opened, and the prisoner, who must have heard my question, entered the room where we were, and my uncle seemed so nervous about it that I did not press the question a second time, as the prisoner took care not to leave us alone or give us an opportunity." End quote. So after that, Vickers makes sure that neither Key, Dr. Key, nor nephew William were ever left alone in the room with Jones again. But as Christmas draws near,
Ding dong merrily on high,
it's time to murder more. Things took a turn for the worse.
Oh my.
As it seems is so often the case in these stories.
God.
Another neighbour, Mrs. Annie Gray of 8 Spring Cottages, who is herself described as a respectable married female,
Well,
heard Vickers shouting next door. "I distinctly heard a slap on the face which the prisoner gave the deceased. I have frequently heard them quarrel, and heard the deceased utter the cry of 'murder' on 2 or 3 occasions.
Whoa.
The first time I heard these cries was in July. The next time I heard the cries of murder was in the latter end of November." End quote. Keep this in mind for Miss Allen's testimony later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mrs. Gray hears him saying crying murder.
Wow.
I heard her say,
"Give me the money and let me go."
He did not make any answer. I then heard her, to all appearances, beating him. He groaned very much. I heard very severe groaning as of a person in very great agony. "Mr. Jones," he said, "pray don't leave me." That was when she said,
"Give me the money and let me go."
According to Miss Allen, Vickers had been beating Jones with a cane for several months, but had now moved on to a sturdier weapon.
Whoa.
Since Christmas...
Sturdier than a cane.
Yeah. Since Christmas, it has been with a broomstick. Not a day since Christmas, but he has been beaten with a very heavy weapon. It was not gentle, but very heavy. She seemed to be doing it as hard as she could.
Like a fish.
So...
I don't know. What is more sturdy than a cane? I mean...
Well, yeah, I don't know.
A bat? They don't... Cricket bat. Yeah, that's kind of sturdy.
Yes.
Sturdy. Whack.
Yeah. But also, she's listening through the wall. So I don't know with this testimony from Miss Allen.
The glass against the wall.
Yeah, but how can you tell? If you haven't... Because it goes on to later describe what she sees outside. But, yeah, I feel like... there's a lot of conjecture on Miss Allen's part.
Sure, yeah.
I definitely know, because there's other people that say that they hear things. So she definitely heard things,
right?
But I think
she's probably
expanding on the
being sensational a little bit.
Yeah. Then around New Year's, hence New Year's,
here we are.
Several harrowing events occur. PC, it's police constable in the UK, Henry White, was passing the house just before midnight on New Year's Eve when he saw Jones outside closing the window shutters. The old man had no hat or coat on, and White saw him fall over as he turned to get back in the house.
Oh, no.
As this was happening, Vickers came up to the garden gate walking with a man named Collins from the direction of the nearby Duke of Wellington public house. Pub. Collins was a relative of Jones who worked as a gardener. Told by White that her master had fallen down, so that's PC White, told by PC White that her master had fallen down, Vickers muttered a drunken protest, then grabbed Jones under the armpits and dragged him inside. Collins and White went their separate ways at the gate. Later, on January 1st, 1853, Miss Allen was chatting to Mr. Jones over the garden fence. She testified that, quote, he had a large lump on the right temple about the size of a walnut, and just above that there was a large wound on the right side of his head, about the size of a moderate-sized teacup. He had his nightcap on at that time, and it was much stained with blood. It was put on so as not to cover the injuries so that I could plainly see them. She goes on to describe a pattern of behaviour that is pretty awful. Quote, I have frequently seen bruises on him before this, and he has complained to me about them. I have seen the prisoner beat him violently and pull him about by his grey hair. I have seen her pull him from the garden fence to his own house by the hair, beating him on the head and shoulders with her clenched fists. I have seen her beat him with both her fists about the head. This was in the course of last spring. She pulled him in then by the hair of the head and beat him with her fists on his head, and she said then she would make him remember going out, as she had desired him not while she was out. For the last 12 months not a week had passed without my hearing her beating him. I can hear it outside the house. I had listened at his request. So, yeah.
So this is probably, where... This isn't the time where you get involved in your neighbor's activities, right? If you wouldn't call the police for something like that.
Well, this is what I will go into later on, discussions around that.
PC Let's Be Avenue is probably...
But, yeah, and I take back what I said about Miss Allen not seeing... I then say in that passage she does see it outside.
Right.
So, yeah. So it's brutal.
And she's not being subtle.
No. Sure. Okay. No, exactly. And because the only material that I can find on this is books and newspaper articles that paint her, but there are several neighbours' testimony that corroborate each other.
All right.
So it's hard to find. And one of the reasons I wanted to explore this story, because I know as feminists, we've seen a lot of female victims where they've both been victims of circumstance.
Right.
I wanted to explore someone who was a little less...
The worst.
Yeah.
Like John Ralph,
Yeah, because... So it's I wish that I could find some material about her prior life to try and explore why
It just sounds like she's awful.
Yeah.
She's just awful.
So, at about 5 o'clock that evening, Vickers came home blind drunk.
Whoop.
According to Miss Allen, directly she went in, she commenced beating Mr. Jones because he had shown himself while she was out. She said,
"Did I not make you promise me you would not show yourself out?" I'm so good at this.
"You're great. I love it. That's why I want you to do it."
I'm so sorry.
No, don't apologize.
"But you have, and I will kick the life out of you."
And she kicked him, but she beat him for nearly half an hour before that. He fell down and groaned and cried most bitterly.
I'm doing Foley work for you.
Oh my God, I'm dead. And she still kept hitting him and beating him. I could hear it was with a heavy stick.
Oh.
I heard her say she would kick him and kick the life out of him.
Oh.
Then she says,
"Oh boy. Come, get up on the sofa, for I want to go out again."
I did not hear Mr. Jones speak again after that, but she went out shortly after.
Wow.
Asked,
So she's a treat.
She's a treat. Asked why she hadn't interfered on hearing all this, Miss Allen said she'd been told she could not legally enter the house unless she heard a cry of murder. So, but in Miss Gray's testimony before, she had heard him say murder. So...
By whose authority?
Well, she said she knew that Key was already working with Jones's relatives on a plan to get him away from the house and felt she should leave the matter to them. Whenever I heard the beating, I was to tell Dr. Key the only reason I did not go to the police because he did not cry murder. So whether he didn't cry murder this time or... I don't know, but that's where I find there's a conflict where it was like, but he had already been calling it, according to Mrs. Gray.
Is it Gray or the other lady from 3?
Well, this is Miss Allen who said this.
Oh, Miss Allen said that.
That she couldn't go unless she heard the word murder. But Miss Gray heard him enough, because basically Gray was, I guessing, on the other side of him. That... Because I think Miss Allen is on one side and then Mrs. Gray is on the other.
Yeah.
And so she... Yes, that's what I find confusing. Because if Gray can hear him crying murder...
Yeah.
But no one... But does
Interesting.
Yeah. But even if Miss Allen had reported her fears to the police, it probably wouldn't have done much good. Mrs. Gray had called a policeman when she heard particularly agonized moans from next door one Saturday night, but the policeman had declined to intervene, saying Jones had already refused to lodge a complaint against Vickers.
Whoa.
So he's the victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
You know, and that's frequently, you know, a neighbor will call... police to a scene, and but unless the victim
presses charges, so to speak.
Yeah.
Oh wow! And he said no.
Well, he's so terrorized by this woman.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and he's in his 80s. Remember, at this point, by this point, he's 83, 84.
Sorry, I was very victim blaming.
But I think we are conditioned to place women in that scenario. But this is why I find this also interesting, because this is elder abuse and a man who's a victim of domestic violence, which does happen. We know it happens. Yeah. Not in the same numbers, but men are much less likely to report domestic violence because of the perception. It was like, well, you're a man.
Envisioning a whole misery situation.
It's pernicious. Domestic violence is horrific, no matter the gender of the victim. It is. You know, and this one particularly, because we know obviously elder abuse happens, and because they can't speak up for themselves. And if he's got head injuries, he's probably not
in his right mind.
Yeah,
not with it.
So the perfect victim. Oh yeah. 5 days later, so I think this is into the new year.
Right.
Vickers talks to Miss Allen over the fence again about being tired of her job and how she wants to be rid of it. What? Mr. Jones had an annuity of £60 from St. James Church in Clerkenwell, which he collected on Thursdays. And she, Miss Lizzie Vickers, states that he will not go back to collect it again. Miss Allen says, "Why, Elizabeth, you alarm me by saying so. Is Mr. Jones ill?" And says that Vickers' response was,
"Oh, no. He's very well, but I tell you, he shall never go where he was last Thursday, though he eats and drinks very well. but I shall be glad to get rid of my job.
So basically she's saying he's not leaving the house again.
Whoa.
To get this money. On Friday, January 7, about 11 p.m., Vickers was seen by Miss Allen passed out outside Jones's front door. She was very much intoxicated. She could not walk when I saw her. She was lying quite drunk. Frequently, it had been the talk of the neighbourhood that Vickers had been brought home and lifted up over the fence. So, whoever she's come up...
Just heft me over the garden. It's fine. I'm good.
Yep. A policeman arrived and was seen standing over Vickers trying to silence her as she ranted about Key, the doctor, coming to call while she'd been out drinking and how she would have kept him out if she'd been there. From time to time, she shouted,
"Oh, Jones, let me in! Let me in!"
Finally, someone who Miss Allen could not see opened the front door from the inside and let Vickers in.
Oh, wow.
She then heard a heavy thump as if someone had fallen to the floor. Oh, no. It was 11:40 p.m. by then, so Allen went to bed.
Maybe it was Lizzie.
That's, I think, the assumption.
Don't.
Yeah.
Or old Jones.
Either, but yeah. I think it was Lizzie. By 8 o'clock next morning, Saturday, Jones' house was shut up tight. Doors locked, windows shuttered, blinds drawn. It remained like that all day. Vickers emerged briefly at lunchtime to get rid of some buskers who'd stopped outside.
Get out of here.
Yeah, but avoided...
singing. Can't take it.
But she avoided all Miss Allen's attempts at conversation, which, judging by how much we've seen Vickers was a chatty Cathy, was highly unusual.
I'm hungover.
Yeah, don't want to talk to you. Also, Miss Allen was used to hearing Jones coughing through the wall every night, but that Saturday night she heard nothing.
Oh, no.
The postman arrived at about 9 a.m. on Sunday morning and threw 2 newspapers outside the back door of Jones's house, where they remained uncollected all day.
Uh-oh.
Allen was on her way back from church at 1 p.m. when she saw Vickers standing at the window and nodded a greeting in her direction. She got no nod back in return and said later that Vickers had seemed very agitated. Allen next saw Vickers at 5 p.m. when she emerged just long enough to pick up the papers that had been lying there all day. So,
she just...
yeah. Miss Maria Hammond, who now occupied 8 Spring Cottages, so Mrs. Gray has moved out. She's like, I'm done. I'm done with this
anymore.
I can't see hear someone crying murder.
She moved
again.
to Wellington Place where it wasn't as horrible.
Miss Maria Hammond, who now occupied 8 Spring Cottages as of December 6, formerly occupied by Annie Gray, reported that she heard a very great deal of angry talking from Jones's house between 4 o'clock and 10:30 on the Sunday evening. I heard that Vickers was talking to someone there. I heard no one answer except, what do you say? And, what? I heard that from 4 o'clock till the time I went to bed. The repeated, what, and so on, Hammond confirmed, were characteristic of Jones. So bless him, he's old man, he's going, what? I can't hear you. Later that night, she was woken by a heavy thud from next door. Oh, no. It appeared as though he had either fallen out of his chair or off his couch in the back parlour. I did not hear more than one fall, and after that there was dead silence. I then heard someone go out of the house. It appeared as if to get some assistance. So that must have been about 4:45 a.m. Oh. PC John Grant was on duty outside Springfield Cottages at that time when he saw Vickers come out and go to Edward Evans' house at 1 Springfield Cottages. Evans was a carpenter who occasionally did some work in Jones's house.
I bet he did.
Right? According to... Well, you're not wrong. According to Evans' own testimony, Vickers told him Jones was dead and asked him to come back to the house with her. He said he sent her back alone while he got dressed and then followed 5 minutes later. PC Grant was still there as Vickers crossed back to her own house. Evans stated that I spoke to her and wished her good morning. She made no reply. She seemed to me as if she had been drinking or was very much agitated. When Evans arrived, he found Jones lying dead on the sofa with his hands arranged neatly over his chest. He called his son over to wait with Vickers and went off to find Dr. Key. The doctor was delayed by another overnight death, but arrived at Jones's house around 8 a.m., where he confirmed that Jones was dead. This was on January 10th.
I love how the policeman was right there. Yep. And no one said, oh, by the way, there's a dead guy in there.
Yeah.
Well, obviously,
she's got to go.
She wouldn't.
Yeah. When asked what had happened, Vickers stated that Jones had been too weak to get up to bed the previous night and had asked her to sit up with him while he remained on the sofa. At about 3:30 a.m., he'd asked her for some water but had died just as she gave it to him.
What?
Asked how long Jones had been on the sofa, she eventually said he'd been there since 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So Dr. Key testified, I asked her if he had made any snoring noise. She said no. I asked her if he was insensible, and she said no. She said he died directly after taking the water. I asked her if he had swallowed any. It appeared to me to be a very confused account that she gave me.
Well, probably
so
because
she does not have her story
she's not telling the truth.
Yep.
And she's drunk.
Yep, exactly. So Dr. Key examined Mr. Jones' body, and among 7 or 8, in quotes, confused injuries, he found the following. Bruising on the right temple, which he estimated had been done sometime in the past week or so, which may be the same teacup-sized injury which Miss Allen noticed on January 1st. When he removed Jones' scalp, he found bleeding underneath this injury, which had released as much as 2 ounces of blood.
Ew.
That amount of blood pressing on the brain would have been enough to cause death, he said, but cautioned that the bleeding may not have started until sometime after the bruise was inflicted. So, as we know with head injuries...
Internal head injury.
Yeah. There was also bruising to the back of the head. This was a more recent wound, dating back at most 5 or 6 days. Neither Dr. Key nor Thomas Hillier, another doctor who testified at the trial, could be certain which of these 2 blows had killed Jones.
Come on, Dr. Key.
Both suggested, however, that the first blow may have left the blood vessels in that area congested and thus more likely to rupture when the second blow was delivered. So herein lies the problem in this case that we'll come back to.
Okay.
The problem with this type of head injury, you can't be 100% certain what, how,
when.
Yeah. Unless it's...
Which.
Yeah. So, Key also found the lower cartilage of Jones's nose was broken, which he said could have been caused by either a fall or a blow, and which dated back 2 weeks or more. When he asked Vickers about this particular wound, she said Jones had fallen on the stairs. According to her, he was always falling about and had recently fallen in the garden too. Key asked her about the other head wounds, but, quote, she made no answer but walked out of the room. I did not ask her any other questions about him. He also stated in his testimony that Jones had up until this time been a decidedly healthy subject. So that's why we know this, that 12 or 13 years where there's nothing, and then this woman starts drinking and all hell breaks loose.
Interesting.
On January 13, 3 days after the old man's death, Ms. Vickers pawned a silver snuff box, a silver watch, and other items at a shop in Kennington Road, getting £3 for them. Nephew William Jones later testified that these items had belonged to his uncle, but Vickers insisted he had bought them as gifts for her and that she was therefore pawning her own property. Police searching the cottage found Jones's will, which valued his estate at £3,000. He'd left £200 each to his 2 favourite nephews, £100 to a third nephew, and £300 to Dr. Key. Vickers got everything else, leaving her with £2,000 even after the funeral and other expenses had been cleared.
Holy moly.
That £2,000 would be worth $240,000 today.
Wow.
So it's not a small sum of money by any stretch, and definitely enough to justify in someone's mind.
And so she knew this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to tell, like, if she was just like, I'm going to kill him now, or if she just was like, I'm just going to beat him until he dies. Either way, I get my money.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And this is the thing that it's so fascinating that this is what alcoholism can do to someone. Just suddenly, do we go from this middle-aged, respectable, well-dressed woman, to
that had to have
such
been
violence.
There. That had to have
that's
been.
And that's why, like I said earlier, like I'm sad that we know nothing about her upbringing. Right. And not that that's any justification, but some kind of an explanation as to...
Sure.
Why, yeah.
Because she's Kathy Bates in Misery, but drunk.
Yep. So the inquest was held on January 14. It called our friend and the gardener and relative of Mr. Jones seen drunk with Vickers, Mr. Collins, just wanted to remind everyone of who he was, as a witness, who described the fall he'd seen Jones take while trying to close his shutters on the night of New Year's Eve, saying that the old man had hit his head badly on the side of the house as a result. Oof. So this is the problem. We have witnesses who say they saw him fall. According to the Times, this corroboration of Vickers' evidence, quote, had much weight with the coroner and jury, quote, unquote, an impression which was reinforced by reports that Key had said the fall, quote, fully accounted, unquote, for Jones' death. Keep in mind these reported comments. They will come to be very important later on. But just remember, it's reports that that's what he'd said. It's not what he actually said. And he goes on. Anyway, look, we will get to it. The inquest returned a verdict of accidental death. The police decided to arrest Vickers anyway, dispatching Superintendent John Lund and PC George Quinier to Springfield Cottages on January 31st. Good. They found Vickers outside the house, giving a bottle and some money to Edward Evans, who was the not the gardener, the man whose house. Yeah, the carpenter, yeah. The two policemen hustled Vickers inside the house before speaking with her. Superintendent Lund said, I then told her that I took her into custody upon the charge of being concerned with the death of her late master, Mr. Jones. She was very violent indeed before she got into the room. She resisted him, Quinier, in getting to the door. She certainly was very strong.
Yeah. Wow.
En route to the station, she asked Quinier who would be brought against her, and he replied it would be William Jones, Maria Hammond, and others.
Oh no, Miss Hammond. Never saw me ill-treat Mr. Jones.
Vickers replied, and then asked what William Jones had to do with it. He charges you with causing the death of his uncle, your late master, Quinier said. Vickers replied,
I expected that. I wonder that you did not come before.
So even she
was like, yeah. Wow.
Even she's
like, well, I am pretty blatant.
This is one of my favorite parts.
Oh, I'm excited.
There were rumors in the neighborhood now that Collins and Vickers planned to marry. Oh. But he was not her only suitor. Oh. 2 days before her arrest, a Coventry man known only as C.H. wrote to her proposing marriage. Whoa. The letter was intercepted by police and later appeared in the Weekly Dispatch. And I'm going to read you the entire letter. Paul Slade only puts a quote. Ooh. I'm going to read you the entire letter as it is written. I have taken the liberty of writing these lines, hoping that it will not give any offence. I have applied to you, as I am in want of a good domesticated wife, and no doubt, as you have lost your master, no doubt but that you should want a good home and a good partner, and if you think anything about it, please to let me know by the return of post, and please to let me know particulars. I mentioned that his to ask your age, to say if they will correspond with mine, for my age is 40. Though I have seen you once or twice, and you perhaps don't know me, but if you answer this immediately, you will soon see me if you are not engaged with anyone. Respectfully.
C.H. I mean, how could you pass that up?
That's literally written H-I-S. H-I-S for is. His.
Oh my word.
As is has. It's brilliant. I love it.
What a catch.
Right? Good luck.
Which one do you swipe right?
Swipe right, yeah. Good luck, sir. This is not the wife for you.
No. It's like Belle Gunness.
Yeah. At her Lambeth committal hearing, Quinier said, the prisoner bears a shocking character in the neighbourhood and has been frequently led home quite drunk by different and strange men. We found the house in a shocking state. In fact, it stank most offensively. Oh. Heaps of soiled and half-washed clothes were in every part of it, and in my opinion, not a single article had been washed there for 5 or 6 months. Oh. I was told it by Miss Allen, who informed me that, for several months, she had not observed a single article hung out to dry. For 6 months. Stinky.
I've had some roommates like that, though, in all fairness.
Oh my God. I feel for you.
Yeah, if you've lived in New York City in your 20s.
Oh God.
You've had that roommate.
There's an outburst from Vickers at this point, who shouted,
Miss Allen had better mind her own business.
Later in the hearing, she became equally angry at the pawn shop charges. Quote, the prisoner here became so vehement and violent that her own solicitor had to beg of her to be quiet, assuring her that by her conduct she was doing herself much mischief. That was printed in the Observer. But it seems none of this, nor her committal to an Old Bailey murder trial, bothered her as she left the Lambeth courtroom with what the Weekly Dispatch called, quote, a carelessness amounting to levity.
I don't care.
So the Old Bailey trial commenced on April 4 and revolved around two key issues. First, whether it was a fall or a blow that had caused the bruise to Jones' right temple, and second, which of the two head wounds it had been that killed him. So that's the problem. It's impossible to tell. On the first question, Vickers' defence made much of Key's reported comments at the inquest about the fall Collins described fully accounting for Jones' death. So remember, at the inquest, he was reported...
New Year's Eve, the fall.
Yeah. P.C. White had already said he'd seen Jones fall onto his hands that night, not, as Collins claimed, hit his head against the wall. So P.C. White tells us something different.
Interesting.
P.C. Quinier had taken Collins back to the garden after hearing his story and asked him to point out just where he'd seen Jones fall. P.C. Quinier, concluded that it was quite impossible for anyone to hit their head against the wall from the spot Collins chose.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So there's a lot of doubt. Still, the doubt persisted. Key denied saying the fall, quote, fully accounted, quote, end quote, for Jones' death, but his denial ended up giving much more comfort to the defense than the prosecution. Dr. Key said, I said very likely a fall against the wall might have produced the bruise. That is, the bruise on the temple. My evidence before the coroner was that the death arose probably from the bruise on the temple. The matter which Collins described, I said, might have occasioned the bruise on the temple. Asked if Jones' condition would, as Ms. Vickers claimed, make him likely to fall over, Key said, he might be prone to tumble if left alone. I cannot say he would not tumble down. The court found him equally unhelpful when trying to identify which had been the fatal wound. Asked again and again for a clear, unambiguous answer to whether the injury on the right temple had killed Jones, the best Key could do was this. I firmly believe that was the cause of death, although it may have been the effect of the blow at the back. It is impossible for me to say which of these two blows caused it. Hillier, the other doctor called in court, added, I think it is impossible to say absolutely what was the cause of death in this case. Faced with an eyewitness account which insisted Jones' death had been an accident, and unimpressed by Key's convoluted attempts to put forward any alternative case, the jury found Vickers not guilty and set her free.
Oh, no.
So I really feel for Key at this point because you can tell he's trying to tell the truth. You cannot say, unfortunately.
Right. But surely, well, nowadays,
yeah,
it would be elder neglect.
Yeah.
And she would be charged for something.
And remember, the jury has a duty to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And they are unable to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
So on the merits of the case, which sucks.
Yeah, she's like, I pulled it off.
Yep. Another key factor in her defense was the testimony of Edward Evans, our carpenter friend. All the other witnesses described her as a vicious drunk, but Evans praised her care of Jones and told the Old Bailey jury that he had never known her to mistreat him.
Of course.
I never saw anything of the sort, he said. Neither did I ever hear Mr. Jones make any complaint.
Of course, because he's not just nailing wood over there.
He was equally generous about Mr. Collins, calling him a decent, respectable man in his vocation. Paul Slade, our friend Mr. Slade, suggests a rather plausible theory, that his evidence was bought.
Yeah.
Just why did Vickers choose Evans as the first outsider to see Jones's dead body that Monday morning? And what exactly did he do to earn the booze and money police saw her giving him on the day of her arrest?
Silence.
Collins' evidence was crucial to convincing the jury that Jones had hit his head in the garden, so perhaps Vickers thought it was worth purchasing a generous character assessment from him as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we get to our friend, Mr. Ebenezer Starnes, and his book. In 1860, Mr. Starnes was George's Attorney General, and he published his book, The Slaveholder Abroad. It's a series of letters from Starnes to the fictional Major Jones of Pineville, Georgia, describing what he sees in England. Early letters, dated 1851, are quite complimentary, praising the Great Exhibition at Crystal Palace and various other aspects of English life. Then Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin is published in 1852. It became a huge bestseller in the UK and created a lot of abolitionist feeling throughout the country. So apparently our friend Mr. Starnes doesn't like this and devotes all his book's later letters to criticising what he saw as England's hypocrisy in condemning slavery abroad while permitting such cruelty and crime at home. Often these take the form of a lengthy court report reproduced verbatim from the London papers with a few words of commentary from Starnes tacked on at the end. Lizzie Vickers is one of these cases.
Interesting.
In the case of Lizzie Vickers, he chose a weekly dispatch account of the evidence at her Lambeth hearing. And in fact, a lot of the testimony that I got was from his letter from the weekly dispatch. Yeah. Oh, I've got to do a Georgia accent. Here we go, wait. Quote, Uncle Tom and his persecutors are fictions, and this people, men, women, and children, are weeping over these fictions, supposed to have happened in the far valley of Mississippi, whilst they have no tears to shed over the facts here related, and which expose the hell of torture to which this old gentleman was subjected in the city of London by a monster as odious as Legree.
You know, there's something about that Georgian accent that just makes you go, ugh.
It does. And so here ends the tale of poor William Jones and the vicious Elizabeth Vickers. As I said at the beginning, there's not too much other information apart from what was printed in the newspapers and in the court records. And like I've repeatedly said, I wish I knew more about her, as this might explain her actions a little more. But from where we stand now, her motives were greed and booze.
Money, money, money.
Yeah.
Money, money, money. Wow.
So there we go.
She's horrible.
She's truly, truly horrible. But it also, it was reminding me a lot of that awful rape and murder case where all the neighbors heard, but no one did anything.
The one in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, where no one did anything.
Everyone heard it, but they all assumed that someone else was going to do something about it. But yeah. I
just don't know why Miss Gray didn't say anything beforehand.
Yeah.
And
but then how did Mrs. Gray hear it?
And Dr. Key, you're going to visit this guy, and he's got bruises all over him. For how many years?
But then he's denied entry to the house for those last few months.
Yeah, but how long has this been happening?
Well, it starts in, 51 is when she starts drinking, and when things start to turn.
I just feel like, see something, say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was also, as you've spoken about in the South, you know, you mind your own business.
Yeah. Oh.
But I mean, these, you know, these houses are close together in London. He wasn't unwealthy,
right?
Comparatively, I mean, he's not the 10,000 or so a year that we hear to bring back.
I'm imagining like Jack the Ripper type like Whitechapel situation, but maybe it's not. People that are really down on their luck, but maybe it's not.
But if he's in cottages, they're in cottages. You know, they're not. It's not
row houses or tenement flats.
Well, I mean, maybe they were. I don't know. I'd have to do a little more research into what Brixton was like at that time.
What was the quality of life back then? Because if you're surrounded by lots of people screaming all the time.
Yeah, and he's made it to 84,
that's a lot by then.
Yeah. It's hard to find, my sympathy obviously goes to Mr. Jones, but I also feel for the doctors because you can see them trying to tell the truth and be honest in their testimony about, but it's that thing with pathologists that you see. It's like, I cannot, we've seen in crime shows where they're like, frequently say, I can't say that was definitively the, so there we go. Lizzie Vickers. So the song that I have written is going to be performed by wonderful Alison.
Not in the voice that I have been exhibiting as Lizzie. Thank goodness. Yeah,
no, but
it's a really good song. I enjoyed playing it.
But I tried to, I think we tend to come down on this on a side as feminists and
on the side of the woman. But
yeah, I can't.
She's really inexcusable, it seems.
And I think it was a combination of neighbours unwilling to say something and
Yeah, and just
but
evil.
greed and booze and shitty neighbours.
Greed and booze and shitty neighbours.
But I have decided to call it Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with...
Oh, yeah.
Little Counting Crows.
Yeah, I left my white dreadlocks at home. This is my home, but they're in the drawer over there.
Yeah.
So we're playing it right now.
Yep.
I'm playing it. Mr. Jones, Mr. Jones, you should have stayed on your own, or never offered Elizabeth Vickers her choice of many delicious liquors. For 13 years you two were great. She was truly your best mate. But in 51 things started to turn, and in the hardest way, boy, you would learn. Greed and booze and shitty neighbors robbed you of your daily labors, though you cried murder time after time. Lizzie committed the perfect crime. Lizzie V, just how cruel can you be? To beat an old man black and blue who took such very good care of you. With his money your chums you bought, so they'd praise you in the Old Bailey court. And poor Dr. Key, who knew he'd be the one who'd mess up his testimony. Greed and booze and shitty neighbors robbed Jones of his daily labors, though you cried murder time after time. Lizzie committed the perfect crime. How I wish we could say that Lizzie ruled the day, but she got off scot-free, acquitted by that bloody jury. So what's the moral to this tale? See what becomes of drinking ale, from respectable middle-aged Elizabeth Vickers to a hellcat wearing murderer's knickers. I had to do it. Greed and booze and shitty neighbors rob you of your daily labors, though you cried murder time after time. Lizzie committed the perfect crime. Greed and booze and shitty neighbors rob you of your daily labors, though you cried murder time after time. Lizzie committed the perfect crime. I really enjoyed singing it.
Thank you, friend. I actually had a lot of fun writing it. At first, I was like, oh my God. And I was trying to make it, I was like, do I write about Luigi Mangione somehow and healthcare? And then that just felt too hard and too tenuous a bow to string. Yeah. And then
I've seen
Greed and Booze and Shitty Neighbors
Greed and the Knickers
came up into my... Of course, you knew I was going to have to rhyme.
I love it.
Vickers with knickers.
You have to.
But it was how I weaved that in. I wasn't exactly sure until I got to the end.
I absolutely love it.
Thanks, friend.
2 thumbs up. Fine holiday
Yay!
fun.
Oh. Clueless.
Oh.
So what's the moral of this story? Just don't drink.
Don't be the worst. Don't be the worst.
Don't be the worst.
And if you hear something that sounds like murder, call it in.
Yep.
Tell somebody about it.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And booze in moderation. Or not at all.
Just,
whatever you need to do on that front. Or if you find yourself beating someone up.
If maybe any kind of substance makes you the worst version of yourself.
That.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And don't beat up don't beat up old people.
Yeah. Really, don't do that.
We're going to have a t-shirt. Don't beat up old people.
Yeah.
Don't go by the river.
Well, we
don't
definitely
beat
need
up
to
old people down by the river.
Anyway, please come find us at our things. Find us on Instagram at Cormac and Gwen.
Yes.
Get in touch with us via email.
cormacandgwen@gmail.com.
Yep. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you'll find the link on our socials. And subscribe, give us a comment. I saw gorgeous Annie subscribe to our channel recently, my lovely, lovely friend. So thank you for that. And what else? What other things do we have?
The Spotify playlist with one song.
The one song
on
it
this time, but
Yeah. Maybe I'll just post a link to the song. Maybe that's easier.
And the wagon train one.
Oh, true. Yes, I do have to do that. I do have to do that.
And look at our Instagram for pictures of the broadside. Right?
Yeah.
And don't beat up old people. Down by the river.
Yeah.
And don't find yourself in some dark holler. No, don't do it, all right. Don't go down by the Thames. No, or the canal. Yeah.